Hello, everyone. It is Forlorn Scout, who is, in fact, not dead or disappeared or not making videos anymore. Um, I am back. For how long? I don't know. But I figured I would make a video, and the start of this will just kind of be an explanation of where I've been and what I've been doing, why I haven't been making videos, what the channel will be kind of going forwards, and of course and then eventually I'll move on to what you're seeing on the screen, which you may have noticed is not Divide and Conquer, and I will get into that. So, where have I been? What have I been doing? Why haven't I been making videos? Well, and I think I mentioned this the last time I last time I made a video. The I had gotten a new job. I've gotten a new job is essentially the long story short. And the job I initially believed was going to actually give me more time for recording. Turns out it really didn't. I mean, it kind of did, but then there was a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and so recording, just kind of took a back seat, and then I was just kind of so tired. When I did have time to record, I just didn't really feel like it. But hopefully now I'll make some videos, kind of have the motivation to make some. But essentially, again, long story short, is I've just been busy with work and life, and it's just been kind of chaotic since I started that new job in October of last year. Kind of hard to believe it's actually almost been a year, but it has. Time flies. So that's where I've been. So the Divide and Conquer videos, the Divide and Conquer series, I should say. So those two series, the Dol Amroth and the Cause of Doom series, they're not canceled officially yet. I still have the saves for them, I believe. I would like to return to Divide and Conquer at some point, but it's just I haven't really been in the mood to play a Total War game, and I'm the kind of person that I really need to be in the mood for something to kind of play it. So, and I kind of cycle through stuff I want to play. Divide and Conquer is fun. It's a mod I recommend. The series were never intended to go on for very long, and I know they haven't really gone on for very long. I think they both collectively they might have like 10 episodes, 10, 11 episodes or something like that. I would like to revisit the mod at some point, maybe revisit the series, maybe restart them, maybe play with a different faction. I'm not quite sure. Again, they were kind of supposed to be quick series while I waited for version 6 to come out, or 5.2. I think it was at the time, and then it became version 6. I can't quite remember. It's been so long. It's actually been like 3 years since Divide and Conquer 5.0 came out, which, I mean, it's been a while. Divide and Conquer mod development has kind of ground to a screeching halt without Galu in charge, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate to see it. The mod is still being developed, but it's kind of like who knows when version 6 will come out. I mean, I don't think anyone knows. I mean, additionally, I tried playing at one point a while ago, and I hadn't played in a while, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. I was super rusty, and it wasn't. Even if I was recording, it wouldn't have been good gameplay. But anyway, so those series are kind of on hold until I either decide to go back to those saves or what have you. But for right now, that's that. And so future series going forward will be what you are seeing on screen. which for those that don't know, this is MegaMek. Technically speaking, it's MekHQ, which is part of the MegaMek suite of programs. You might be asking, if you don't know Forlorn Scout, what the heck am I looking at? This is MegaMek, MekHQ. They are programs that essentially emulate tabletop BattleTech into a program that you can, in the case of MekHQ, you can run a whole campaign off of. And the next question you might be asking is, Forlorn Scout, what the heck is a BattleTech? Well, a BattleTech is a tabletop war game franchise focused around battle mechs, which are these things you see here. There's many other things. Of course, there's tanks and planes and infantry and all sorts of other stuff, but the game is pretty much focused on mechs. The mech is just, I mean, it's what you would think it is. It's a kind of, most of them are kind of vaguely humanoid-shaped machines of war. They're not Gundams. They move. They're kind of BattleTech mechs are a little more unwieldy. They operate a little more like tanks, like two-legged or occasionally four-legged tanks, but they operate more like tanks. They're not like, it's not like Japanese mecha where you have mechs that do like somersaults and stuff like that. BattleTech is not really hard science fiction, I'd say. But it's closer to that kind of hard science fiction. And there's a lot of lore for BattleTech. I will get into it very briefly just to kind of set the stage for the company, because this video, among other things, is explanation of what the heck is going on. So what you are looking at, if you do not know, is the inner sphere, which are these factions right here. If you can see my mouse, I'm kind of just, or if you can see it, you know what I'm doing with my mouse. If you can't, assuming my recording software does or does not pick it up, I'm essentially just hovering around in the center of the map here. That is the inner sphere, and it is surrounded, if you go around the kind of multicolored circle in the center, that is the periphery. And then there's the deep periphery, but that doesn't really matter. Essentially, this is the majority of human colonized space. And very brief overview, 21st century onward, humanity develops faster than light travel, and we, of course, as with many science fiction settings, humanity goes out, starts to colonize everything. Eventually, this colonization effort causes the creation of multiple different nation states. At the center, based around Earth, that is not Earth, that is Earth, also called Terra, is the Terran hegemony. But there are other large nations that form the kind of main great houses of the inner sphere, or what would become the great houses. BattleTech is very kind of, has a kind of neo-feudal governmental system, which is what pretty much all nations in human space kind of run off of. Partially due to some things I'll get onto probably later, but also just because kind of normal political ideologies you would think of in the modern day just don't exist anymore, due to things I won't get into. There's lots of lore videos. If you're very curious about BattleTech lore, I would suggest watching the videos by Sven Vanderplank. He has a whole series, like going back to, like, I think that his first video like starts off with the lore that starts in like the 1980s. Not like our 1980s, like BattleTech's 1980s. That's how deep the lore goes. Anyway, so you have the Terran hegemony, which is/was ruled by House Cameron. You have the Lyran Commonwealth, ruled by House Steiner. You have the Draconis Combine, ruled by House Karita. You have the Federated Suns, ruled by House Davian. You have the Capellan Confederation, ruled by House Liao, and then you have the Free Worlds League, ruled by House Merrick. And then you have the Periphery Nations. There's one that doesn't exist anymore. That is the Rimworlds Republic, ruled by House Amaris. You have the Outworlds Alliance, ruled by House Avalar, I think it is. You have, you have the Tortuga Dominions. They're kind of what they sound like. They're pirates. You have the Taurian Concordat, ruled by House Calderon. You have the Magistracy of Canopus, ruled by House Centrella. This is the place, if you've ever seen the Canopus Catgirl memes, which sadly are far more prevalent than they should be. That is the kind of, sex, drugs, and rock and roll part of the Inner Sphere, or at least that's kind of what it would become. So essentially, you have all these nations, and they're all kind of fighting with each other until a point in which the Terran hegemony convinces all the great houses to join a kind of federation, federation of nations called the Star League. The Star League then determines that the Star League should really be the only human nation, and so they also conquer all the periphery nations who had previously refused to join. Fast forward past a kind of 150-year golden age, the Star League starts to decline, and then enter onto the stage is House Amaris. House Amaris was really pissed about the whole Star League thing. So they had a kind of multi-generational plot to destroy the Star League that culminates in Stefan Amaris befriending the last First Lord of the Star League, or who would become the last, Richard Cameron, who at the time of his ascension was like 6 or 7 years old. But he befriends him, and he manipulates him, and kind of turns him into a really bad person, although debatably Richard would probably have been a pretty bad ruler regardless, but that's a different point. Amaris essentially manipulates the situation to his favor, and it all culminates in a massive coup. He takes over the Terran hegemony, he kills Richard Cameron, he wipes out the ruling Cameron dynasty, and he sets himself up on his newly rechristened Amaris Empire as the, of course, emperor of all human space. Well, someone didn't really like that, and that is the commander of the Star League Defense Force, General Alexander Kerensky. Kerensky refuses to bow to Stefan Amaris. The other great houses also didn't bow to Amaris, but they kind of stayed neutral in the conflict. Essentially, you end up with a 14-year civil war between Kerensky and Amaris. It ends with Amaris being dethroned, Amaris being killed. His whole family gets killed, actually. The Amaris Empire is, overthrown. The Terran hegemony is restored, although I will get into its current state here in a second. And Kerensky is left standing in the ashes. Now, there is no First Lord anymore. And so after the Civil War is done, these 5 great houses, they reconvene. They reconvene the Star League Council, and because they have to figure out, what's gonna happen. Well, the big thing is, one of the first things they do is they're like, okay, well, who's gonna be First Lord? Well, so you have 5. The House Lords here, they're all ambitious. They all want more power, more territory, more wealth, and all that. And of course, the throne to the greatest, most powerful nation to ever exist in human history is now vacant. So what do? They all want the First Lordship. So they can't decide who gets to be First Lord. Eventually, they just disband the Star League Council. Things are heading towards war. Kerensky can see it. Everyone can see it. Kerensky takes the remains of the SLDF and heads out of the Inner Sphere on a self-imposed exile. Most of the Inner Sphere, not all of it. Or, not most of the Inner Sphere. Most of the SLDF but not all of it. In doing so, he kind of leaves the remains, the burning remains of the Terran hegemony here, which was weak. A lot of the planets were destroyed from the Civil War, and things were just really bad. There's a reconstruction effort, kind of headed by this guy called Jerome Blake. Get into him when some stuff happens on the map, probably in a later episode. But essentially, this nation, which was the most powerful human nation out of all of them, is now weak and has basically no military. So all the great houses, and of course all these worlds previously were very rich and industrialized and have tons of people living on them, and so the great houses start, it's a feeding frenzy. They're trying to get as much of the Terran hegemony as they possibly can. Kerensky is gone. Any breaks on a possible coming succession war, you can see early succession war, any breaks on any such conflict is gone. So what would become the first succession war has not started yet, but it will soon, in about a year. In the meantime, we are playing as one of a group of SLDF soldiers that has stayed behind. The mercenary group I am playing as, because in MekHQ you can really only play as a mercenary right now. Nothing else is, I think, really coded to like being fully working. But I am playing, perhaps if you want to think about it like that, I am playing as the 801st Killbourn Combat Group, made up of 2 lances of mechs. A lance is just a grouping of 4 mechs, and then a transport dropship, which is just space space to ground transportation for mechs and other things like tanks and infantry and other stuff like that. And we are currently based here on Killbourn, which is currently controlled by the Draconis Combine, but we don't really like that because we are from much of the SLDF, specifically the Royal Regiments, we're all raised from the Terran hegemony. And of course, we don't really like that people are kind of trying to poach our nation. So instead of going with Kerensky into exile, we kind of decided to stick around, is the kind of long short of it. Issue is that the character's homeworld, which I'll get into here in a second, is currently occupied by the Draconis Combine, particularly militant Great House. And the kind of opening part of the campaign I envision is essentially we'll be fighting the Draconis Combine. We don't really like them being here. We're, in the kind of collapsing, this collapsing dead nation. We're trying to hold on to what was. You could, you'll probably see it in the title or something. I think I'll essentially going to call this I'll call it something. You'll see it in one of the episodes when it goes up. But to just kind of go over the force now, again, this is just a quick setup episode, so I don't have to do it all when the kind of first real episode starts. I might go over it briefly for anyone who just skips this episode, but first episode will probably be the first actual mission, where I'll get the actual contract started, because we're technically mercenaries, but we're fighting for the Terran hegemony. But so the unit I started with, you can kind of start with whatever sized unit that you want. You can start in MegaMech, you can start with multiple companies of mechs. 3 lances is a company. So you can start with multiple companies of mechs. You can start with a single lance. I decided to start with 2 lances. And I think I'll go to the hangar for that. Well, I decided to start with 2 lances and a dropship because you never used to need a dropship with MegaMech, but now you kind of do. It's all about company rating stuff. This is a Union class. It's kind of a very widespread dropship design. It can hold a company of mechs plus some other stuff. But to just go over the units available, I went with no assault mechs. I don't really like starting with assault mechs and mega mech. I think it makes things a little too easy. If you start kind of too heavy. Alternatively, it makes things a little too hard because you drop into the first mission and it's like the game will generate op for against you and it's just ridiculous. But anyway, I started with 2 heavy mechs. This is a Black Knight. Specifically, it's the 6B. So most mechs with a lowercase b designation after the number, those are royal mechs. Those are mechs that were had the best tech, and they were exclusively used by the royal regiments, or nearly exclusively used. Some of the older royal mechs ended up in the regular army. The SLDF was kind of subdivided into 2 armies, or 2 kind of forces. You had the royal regiments, which again, like I said, all came from the Terran hegemony. And then you had the regular army, which were all those units were raised from the great houses. But this is a 6B. It's an all-energy mech. Has medium lasers, large pulse lasers, ERPPC. Has an active probe, which helps it to spot things. Double heat sinks, so it runs very cool. Moves 4/6. 4 being its walking. 6 it can move if it runs. It's very well armored. It's a great mech. It's an excellent mech. It's probably one of the best mechs for this time period, and it's actually a mech that holds up way out into the BattleTech timeline, to the current era, which is Ilklan, which happens about 370 years after this. But I won't get into that. I'll get it maybe in a later episode. But for right now, it's a pretty much cutting edge piece of technology. Something that isn't a cutting edge piece of technology is this Thunderbolt 5S, which is a very old mech by this point. This is I think this is a design that's like 300 years old at this point, and you can kind of tell it has single heat sinks. So heat sinks it's essentially just a fancy way of saying how much you can fire a turn. Each weapon has a heat value. And then the heat sinks tell you how much of that heat will be, instantly dissipated. You don't have to worry about it. If you go over that number, you'll build up heat, and if you build up too much heat, that can cause problems, mech shutdowns. You can even blow up your mech if your mech overheats too much. But this is a very old mech. It doesn't really have any fancy tech. This is what is generally speaking known as an intro tech. You can see introductory, because it has only basic technology. It doesn't have anything that's fancy or technologically advanced on it. This is all stuff that is widely available. It's still a good mech, even this time period, even going beyond into the further succession wars, which again, I'll get into at a later point. But, so this is our second heavy mech. I didn't want to start with 2 very powerful heavy mechs. I figured that this would be a good compromise. We also have some medium mechs, which are they're just lighter tonnage. So this is a Shadowhawk 2H. I love this mech. I know a lot of people hate the Shadowhawk. This is because it's not a very good mech. It doesn't really do anything well. Its weapons aren't very good. It doesn't jump very far. Essentially, when a mech jumps, it has like rocket boosters essentially on it. Allows it to jump, as it sounds. But this is another intro tech mech. Shadowhawk 2H is a very common mech. I think it's still being produced in Ilklan, again, the newest era that came out a few years ago. But it's a very common mech. Again, intro tech, there's nothing special on this mech, nothing special or advanced. It's just a basic, very common mech that this unit picked up in their, either as a replacement mech or just as something, really anything to use in their guerrilla war against the Draconis Combine. This is a Crab 27. This is a regular army mech because it does have some advanced technology on it. So it has ferrofibrous armor, which is slightly better than standard, but otherwise it's entirely normal. It doesn't have anything. It has single heat sinks. It has basic laser weapons. It doesn't have anything else. It's a Crab. It's a very good mech. I love the Crab. This is a Sentinel 3L, also a regular army mech. Again, single heat sinks. It's very, very standard. Moves fairly quickly. It's a 6.9 mech, but it has an ultra autocannon 5. The difference between an ultra autocannon and a regular autocannon is the ultra autocannon fires twice. Essentially, it's a burst fire autocannon. It also has a Streak SRM 2. SRMs being short range missiles. With missiles with a Streak designation, they won't fire without getting a target lock. And once they have a target lock, they hit with everything, which makes Streaks actually pretty good and pretty heat efficient. Now the quirk with this mech, that you might notice this Q here, well, I forget exactly how this is handled, but the Sentinel has a problem essentially with its ammo feed. Its ammo feed to the SRM. And how it will essentially, I think what happens is it commonly jams. And how the Sentinel, it's something that was never fixed in its design, and so commonly what Sentinel pilots will have to do is they'll actually have to they use their arm, which is just like a normal arm. It has like a hand on it. They have to swing it over, and they have to hit their side torso to essentially knock the jam out of the missile. But it makes the mech very vulnerable. As I believe it's for the missile. It might actually be for the autocannon. I can't quite remember, but it's a mech design that it's a very light medium mech. It's a 40 ton. It's basically on the verge of being a light mech, but it's a mech that has some problems, and so I was fine taking it. It's nothing too advanced. We have the Mongoose 66 here. This is a light mech. It's only 25 tons, but it also moves much faster. That's kind of the thing. Heavier mechs, they move slower, they have more armor, more weapons. Lighter mechs, faster, less armor. But being, the speed is the armor. This is also another regular army mech. It has endosteel structure, which is just lighter structure. Frees up weight. Ferrofibrous is kind of the same deal, but otherwise it has an active probe like the Black Knight. But otherwise it has standard. The rest of it is pretty standard. Has single heat sinks. It's a command light mech, so it gives a bonus to whatever lance it's put into. Otherwise, this is another good mech. It's a very good light mech. I like it. Now, the Locust 1V here is probably one of the most common mechs ever. One of the most common mechs ever. It's tons and tons of them are produced. The 1V, which is the kind of base model, much like the Shadowhawk 2H, is I think it's still in production 300 years later, and it started production about 300 years before this. So there's a lot of them rolling around. But this is a mech that moves as fast as the Mongoose, but it doesn't have as much armor as the Mongoose. It definitely does not. It doesn't have arms. It just has machine guns. Machine guns and a medium laser, and it's a very basic mech. It doesn't have a lot of armor. Again, its speed is the armor. It's just kind of I think it's called it's lumped in with the bug mechs, but it's kind of like a chicken mech. It has kind of almost like chicken legs, I guess you could say. We also have the Mercury 99. This is I don't think this is a Royal mech. But this is another light 20-ton light mech. This is more advanced. its weapons are the same, just generally used, but it has this mask system, which essentially allows it to sprint faster. And it has some special things where the weapons can actually be swapped out very quickly because they're in like modular. Um, they use this kind of modular technology, which was kind of like prototype for this time period, but would be put onto this mech as kind of like a test bed. And there aren't many of these running around, but I wanted to have another light mech, so I figured I'd grab this. It's not like amazing or anything. But those are the 8 mechs we're running with. I was considering running some tanks and some infantry, but those really bloat the roster, and I'll get into the roster here in a second. And this is our dropship, a Union. Again, it's just a dropship. It has lots of weapons on it. We will never be using it in combat because I don't want to lose it. It is a very, very expensive piece of equipment. I wonder if I can actually see. I'm not going to get into it. It's a very expensive piece of kit. But yeah, I can hold a total of 12 max 2 aerospace fighters if we were ever to get them, and some cargo. Now we're way over this cargo limit. I'll get into that as well. But that is essentially the starting units for the company. I have 2 lances of max, or kind of recon lance, and this kind of heavier command lance. And let's see here, what to go with next. I'll go with personnel. So this is a pretty expansive personnel list, and this is kind of like, if you ever play Mega Mech or decide to play Mega Mech, this is something that you're going to have to manage, because you need mech warriors for piloting your mechs. You need doctors for healing your wounds. You need logistical personnel for doing logistics. If you have a dropship, you need pilots and gunners, and to fix up your mechs, you need mech techs. Sometimes you end up with dependents and children. In this case, this is what also happened just randomly as I was adding personnel. And this isn't even like, this isn't a lot of personnel. But one of the reasons I decided not to have a platoon of infantry is because this is already a pretty long list, and this took me a while to go through and make sure everything looked okay. And I still probably will go through it as the series goes and just tweak some stuff here and there, because I think I missed some stuff. But just imagine this list, but with like an extra 28 people. And it's not even like a good unit or anything. I mean, it's just a platoon of infantry, and they die like instantly. So I just decided not to bother with them at this point. I might add them later, but I think I figured keep it simple for the start of the series. Hangar. I will go over the warehouse because here, if you might have noticed, we only have about 74.5 tons of cargo capacity on our dropship, but we have 401 tons of equipment in the warehouse. Now, you might be saying, well, why? Why do we have all this junk to start off with? Well, it's because I did this for 2 reasons. One, I don't really intend. It's more like I'm assuming we're always going to be taking damage, losing parts during combat and stuff. And so I started with a ton of stuff: extra legs, mech heads, and hand actuators, and extra weapons and ammo and all sorts of stuff. I did this because it's less annoying to deal with at a later point. Waiting for after a battle, having to wait for procurement. I don't want to wait for that. I've done that in some campaigns, and that's really annoying to deal with. So I just decided I was going to start with a bunch of stuff. Another thing, this is a former of the kind of short lore of this is a former SLDF unit, and even after the end of the Civil War, they were very, very well supplied. So just think of all this stuff as the remains of whatever this unit was left with. Now, I do believe this is essentially, my idea behind this is essentially the remnant of a larger unit that was fighting the Draconis Combine. Something more like battalion level. But obviously they've seen some better days, and so they've been forced to become guerrilla fighters. Let's see here. I think the last thing, again, so this is Killbourn. We're here in the middle of the Terran hegemony, but owned by the Draconis Combine. I don't think technically by the date this system should be owned, but it is, and it makes for an early contract. Before I get to the contract, I realized I probably should go over some stuff. So the kind of main commander for the series is going to be Colonel James Kincaid. If you know anything about Battletech lore, Kincaid is the family name, and also with Killbourn. The family is associated with the planet Killbourn. They are a kind of famous Terran hegemony noble house, minor noble house. They were friends of House Cameron, and they're mostly famous because when battle mechs were first being developed by the Terran hegemony, Charles Kincaid was the first battle mech pilot in history. He ended up, because of the experimental neural helmet, which is a helmet that tracks your brain waves and essentially allows you to better operate the mech. It was experimental at the time, and it caused him brain damage, and he ended up not surviving, essentially. But he's famous for that. He's famous as the first mech pilot. The Kincaid family is not like a super notable family, but it's something. I play a lot of, or I used to play a lot of Rogue Tech Online, which is a big mod for the 2018 Battletech game made by Harebrained Schemes. And part of that is I always have an RP character for those online games, and I had kind of randomly chosen the Kincaid family, and it has something that's kind of stuck. I didn't intend for it to be something, but I've kind of rolled with it for so long that I don't really. Usually, when I do BattleTech stuff, I always make a character that's, of House Kincaid. But we have some other characters here. I'm probably going to adjust some of their personality stuff because I didn't really fiddle with that. But these are mostly veterans of the Star League Civil War or recruited shortly thereafter, so they still do have good combat training. Most of the other personnel will kind of get into as time goes. Let's see here, what other things I should go into. I guess I should say the kind of general. So the start of the series will be focused on, fighting a guerrilla war for Killbourn and for the wider Terran hegemony. And we'll see how long that lasts. The kind of longer term goal is to try and survive the first succession war, and that's going to be a challenge. But our first contract as quote unquote mercenaries, if I can find the briefing room, there it is the Killbourn Resistance. This is a custom mission I made. Just by doing add mission, you can make your own contracts instead of going to the contract market and getting a contract from here. I wasn't finding a random one that was spawning on Killbourn, so I just decided to make my own. And so, of course, our employer is the Terran hegemony. We are fighting the Draconis Combine. The mission type is a guerrilla warfare. I just left it regular. This C is for the quality of their equipment. So this is just kind of mid-level. The length of the contract, it starts in 3 days, by the way, but we're already on the planet. So I made the contract a year. Our monthly payout is about almost 1.2 million. Command rights kind of determines how independent our company is. I left it as independent because essentially we're an independent unit, essentially. We have no battle loss compensation. We don't have any salvage yet because there hasn't been any battles. I gave us all the salvage, again, because we're essentially an independent command. But that's that. I haven't generated, I don't think the map hasn't generated yet, and there's no missions yet. So that will generate on the 5th. And I'll do that for the next episode, which will kind of be the actual first episode for this. And I think that's kind of it. Yes. So we have here the king. I did some starting capital just to make sure we had some money to start off with. Only 1 million C-bills. This is not a lot of money, by the way. Also, you can see our net worth is quite a lot. When I said the Union was an expensive piece of kit, I meant it. It's 109 million. It's more than pretty much everything else we have combined. We didn't get any advance funds for taking the contract. That's fine. We'll get paid monthly. There's just, again, we're mercenaries. There's just, I guess, think about it as a way we're getting maybe paid by some sort of minor hegemony noble benefactor or something to kind of mess with the Draconis Combine on this planet. Although it is our homeworld, so maybe it's just someone else in the Kincaid family is paying us to go mess with the Drax. But I think that's it for this episode. Hopefully this series lasts longer than some of the other ones, and hopefully I actually have the time to record. But for this episode, that's going to be it. I don't blame you if you skip this one. This one has been particularly rambly. I'll try and be a little more concise with the other one. But the next episode will be kind of actually starting in MegaMech. I don't claim to be an expert in it. Don't expect me to be an expert with it. I'm still fairly new to MegaMech. But the next episode will be kind of the start of the campaign, probably our first actual engagement on the map. And hopefully we don't die. The kind of, again, the short-term goal is just to survive this first contract. Longer term is maybe to survive until the 29th century, till the year 2800, which is 15 years away. That would be a pretty long campaign, but we'll see if we can make it there. See if we can actually just survive the first few years of the first succession war. But anyway, for that, I think that's it. So again, if you've watched this rambly mess about my return, then I thank you. I do appreciate it. And if there's any suggestions or anything anyone wants to talk about for BattleTech stuff, or anything, or any suggestions for stuff you might want to see me do, just leave a comment or whatever. I really appreciate it. But if you just enjoy watching, don't feel pressured to do anything. This is a very small channel. It really doesn't matter, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Next episode I will be recording here pretty much at the same time, so I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.